Okay, so this is Addictions and Family, January 29th, and so we've just chosen our topics for presentation, and we're getting into the class material. So this is a follow-up from last class, and this basically illustrates the similarity in chemical structure. So if you think about cocaine, and it's got a bunch of hydrogen atoms, a carbon atom, oxygen, and then it's got this weird structure out here. And so then you look at your naturally occurring dopamine, which is inherent in your brain, and so it's kind of the same because these hydrogen molecules kind of look similar. There's some oxygen out here, but then you get here and it's different. So basically, what that's able to do, we talked about the key analogy. That's able to go to the reuptake sites on the axon on the presynaptic neuron and block that. That's able to go in there and wedge in that reuptake site and make the dopamine bounce around and keep on attaching to the postsynaptic receptor, which keeps the action potentials coming, keeps the neurotransmission happening. Now, if you compare that to your natural dopamine to the chemical structure of amphetamine, it's darn near the same. You've got all these hydrogen atoms. There's a couple of oxygen atoms out there, but then here you've still got the two carbons. You've still got a nitrogen, a hydrogen. It's eerily similar, and so your brain is really indistinguishable because of the similarities in chemical structure. So that on a very, very basic level explains why this is a much more potent substance than that. And also explains why this can do so much more damage. This still does damage, don't get me wrong, but this does some very has some very lasting effects. Does that make sense in follow-up? Okay. I think it's good to see it because it's not just somebody, this is solid evidence why. Where that explains a lot too. Okay, so let's move into our PowerPoints. So hopefully everybody found those. Let's go ahead and go into this one here, Addictions and Family 129, 15. And before we get into our substances, because we're going to be focused in on that. That's kind of why we're taking the class, is to understand drugs and understand effects on families. But I want to get into our evidence-based resources. As I probably said before, I had a group of graduates from NWSU that I was supervising and asked them to, demonstrate evidence-based practices for me in our supervision groups for their license. And so people would come up with these cute little hokey things, and while they, maybe were endearing and based on a theory, they weren't necessarily based on a study. When I say evidence-based practice, I mean there's a study out there that says by doing this, and this methodology, here's your outcomes, here's what you can expect to happen. And so that's what when I've given the list of options for your presentations, that's really been what's in my mind is I want you to be aware of that these are normed and scientifically studied techniques that are shown to work. So if you're if you have to go before an audit, that's a funding source says, well, tell me what you did. Well, I did this. Okay, well, I trust you because there's a lot of studies that says that's effective. Whereas I saw a note that talked about and this is one of the people that came up with the hokey techniques, a progress note from an individual that had, this is verbatim from what I remember, client was in panic mode, appeared to be upset. So I went and got them a cup of water and came back. And then we talked about how their day was going. So what, I know not a whole lot of you are in the field yet, but what is wrong with that if you were reading that progress note?
Anybody could have written that.
Yes, anybody could have written that. What if you were a funding source looking at possibly recouping funds on what people had done?
You're not really doing anything. You observed a couple things and went and got some water.
Thank you. Yeah, you did absolutely really nothing to intervene on a psychological level. Okay, yeah, you met Maslow's hierarchy. I could maybe argue they met like level 1 of Maslow's pyramid. But panic mode, that I remember that distinctly. Upset, which I don't think is in the DSM anywhere, and which really doesn't explain any type of depression, anxiety, and then got a cup of water. So I want people. That was a graduate from Northwest. Now most folks that I've right now we've got a really good crop of people that have graduated and are under supervision, and the folks that I'm around up here, I think that somehow we've recruited better students. I don't know, because the person that wrote that is, well, they're no longer in the field. And it's basically, I think they had trouble passing the NCE, but they also, I think, had trouble really recognizing what it is that they were supposed to be doing in counseling. So I want people to be aware of these things when you get there, okay? So hopefully that all made sense. All right, Jennifer, do you mind reading this?
Employing therapeutic techniques which, through empirical quantitative research, have been shown to be effective in the treatment of psychological disorders.
So that is evidence-based practice in a nutshell. We'll have a test question on that. So here's why I stress this as well. It's not just that I want everybody to know what they're doing, but there's some evidence that says using these EBPs, we'll shorten and abbreviate there, can have some real effects for you and your clients. So Ashley, what would we expect then, based upon the slide there?
Provide better care for your clients, provide you with greater confidence, insulate against burnout, and prevent against recruitment of funding.
Okay. One of the studies that I became keen to as a supervisor, everybody, when you get in the field, when your first day you're counseling people, like I just got under supervision for licensure, and or let's say you're doing your practicum, and I'm here with somebody. Almost universally, people come out and they're Rogerian, because that's an easy thing to do, to be empathic, to listen and try to understand your client, and then reflect. Almost universally. And so, and that's not a bad thing. There's some studies that says, that can be marginally effective. However, over time, what research shows is folks that rely only upon Rogerian, rely only upon their relationship with the client, those people have a very, very high burnout rate. Can anybody give me a reason why that might be? Chris says countertransference. I'd agree with that, because you're basing your technique on your emotional relationship with that person. What else?
You're taking it all in. I mean, you're listening to what they're saying and you're reflecting on all of that, and
And I want us to do that. I want us to start there. I really do want every counselor to start there, because if we don't, then I don't know that we're really doing counseling. Yalom talks a lot about the therapeutic relationship being the main catalyst of change, which I agree with. But yes, so you're taking that all in, you're taking that all on. And so think about, Molly, think about Kayla. What happens if you take that all on and your client doesn't change?
Be exhausting. just
Yes.
relying on yourself.
Frustrating.
Absolutely. Gets frustrating. And there's a lot of self-doubt that creeps in. I've had a couple of people that I've supervised over the years that was their main, I remember one very distinctly, that was their main modus operandi. That was how they did counseling, and that's how I'm going to do it. They were very focused and, that's what I know how to do. And she burned out because her some of her folks would improve, but for the ones that didn't, and this is what the research says, they tend to blame themselves. It's my fault. I wasn't good enough. Because it's about what you reflect. It's about what you're able to carry, as you said, Kayla, as a Rogerian therapist. And so by learning, by doing evidence-based practices, you will be insulating yourself from burnout, because it's just like going to a doctor and you've got pneumonia. And so what's the doctor going to give you for pneumonia? Hopefully some penicillin, some antibiotics. Depends on if you need maybe a steroid shot. There's a protocol. There's a protocol when somebody presents to the doctor with pneumonia. Should be the same protocol if somebody presents to you with depression. I'm going to try some self-talk. I'm going to try to identify their self-talk. I'm going to do a little bit of research in here to see, what's triggering the depression. I'm going to try to, maybe go about getting the client to exercise. I'm going to definitely do some CBT techniques here, some relaxation, see what the symptoms of the depression are, see if we can alleviate those symptoms. We have the same ability to write our prescription. And you know what? If that person doesn't get better, what does the doctor do if the person doesn't get over pneumonia? And he tried everything he could, or she could. Refer out. Could refer out if the person passes away. The same kind of thing. The doctor probably is going to feel some, what did I do, and question themselves. But at the end of the day, they're going to say, I did everything I could. Now, I'll tell you, early on, I was pretty Rogerian, and I questioned myself, thinking, if anybody ever kills themselves, I don't know that I'd be able to handle it. Now, knock on wood, I've never had a client intentionally, kill themselves. I've had a client or two die before, but I've not had anybody, do it intentionally. So, again, that's something that that's the worst of the worst scenario. But each one of us should be at least attuned to that possibility, but also be able to say, I did CBT, I did this. If it comes down to it, like Chris said, I did refer. I did try to get them help at the inpatient hospital. So anyway, that's enough rant, but that's the motivation behind learning these things. All right, so I gave this last time. I think I just read it, but this is the NREP, the National Registry of Evidence-Based Practices. They have 3 to 7 new summaries each month, so they're constantly updating this from the universities that are doing research. I wish we would do some here. I know Dr. McMillan tried it one time, but it just didn't really ever take off. And there's 234 peer-reviewed interventions on the website. 90 additional ones are in the review queue. And here's their topic areas. Substance use abuse prevention there's 96, so there's a lot of evidence, and equal between substance abuse treatment and mental health treatment. 60 studies each. 60 techniques, pardon me. Okay, these are really good resources for you just to have professionally. The first one determines our funding. And if you're going to be a BHRS, as Chris knows, as Ashley knows, as Jessica is finding out, if you're going to practice as a bachelor's level person, you have to go to that website, and it's an extensive website, but it'll direct you to that training. They also have regular training for substance abuse counselors. If you're going to practice and get paid by DMH for what you do, or Medicaid, you're going to have to be ASI trained. Addiction Severity Index trained and certified. If you're going to work with teens, Teen Addiction Severity Index. ASAM, American Society of Addiction Medicine, they have a placement criteria that you have to go, PPC 2, and take that training. So there's some mandatory trainings that are available through that website for you to be able to practice as an LADC. The next one, Molly, what's the next initials there? Sorry, just checking in with you. Yeah, like I just went over ODMHSAS. The next one down. That is referred to as ODAPCA. That is if you do the LADC certification where you take your oral boards. There, you also submit your case study and pay them some money to be able to do that. So ODAPCA is an important one too. Kayla, what's the next one down there?
OBLADC.
And what's that stand for?
Oklahoma Board of Licensed Alcohol and Drug Counselors.
Right. So if you're going to do your licensure, you get in touch with those guys. And they'll also keep your CEUs, your continuing education credits, after you're licensed. Next one is SAMHSA. If anybody chooses Matrix, they have most of the Matrix model published in the public domain there. And so there's actually a lot of really good resources. Like if you wanted like a marijuana handout for teens or something on methamphetamine, opioids, they have a lot of handouts public domain that are evidence-based that people can just go and pull down. You can actually order like a box of resources, and a lot of the times they're free. So just for treatment providers. So that's a good place if you're looking, you're starting up your practice, you're looking for things to use. Jump on there, look around. There's stuff hidden on that website and sometimes it says out of stock, but they'll have a digital copy you might be able to print off too. And then next, we have National Institute of Mental Health, and that should be NIMH, not NIHM, Health Mental. That was my dyslexia kicking in. Again, there's some techniques listed there. What's the next one, Chris? What's the next one down there? NDCI.
National Drug Court Institute.
Yeah. If you go there is actually, if you want training, if you need CEUs, want some online training hours, there's actually 13 free CEUs just for learning about how drug courts operate and the evidence behind them. And the next is the CDC, and that has a lot. I gave the ACE study link there, which we'll get into. And then this one, for those of you working with kids, this is a very extensive resource, and it continues to expand because this is where our research has shown that this is the etiology of a lot of our psychological disorders. So if you go to the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, you'll find a wealth of material. I'll just pull something down for you here. So if you follow these links, you go to resources, go to topics. Let's just go to trauma types. Let's say we have a tornado here in Oklahoma, and so then we've got natural disasters. So keep on following. Click here for more resources. Earthquakes, epidemics, that goes all the way into so you kind of have to follow the rabbit hole down. Here's something on psychological first aid. And see, each one of these has, let me see if I can actually get something pulled up that's an actual resource. Here we go. So here's like a handout to help you connecting with others, social support. So each, this is a massive, massive website with a lot of different parent tips for helping infants and toddlers after disasters. So that was just one little tiny snippet of something that was listed. So again, these resources are out there, but people don't know about them. So I just want to make them available to you. That's a really good thing if you're ever you have a few moments to spare and just want to look around and try to figure out if something could help you in what you're doing. All right, let's go back to our PowerPoint. And that's it. Any questions on our evidence-based little 20-minute snippet of our class there? Okay. Molly, any thoughts there?
I was trying to make sure it's up on my computer. I can't yet, but I will. I just have to download something, but no, I don't have any.
Okay. You look pensive. You look like you're in thought. So, anyway.
Well, I was sorry. I was trying to think why won't this download to my computer, but I know why now.
Okay. All right. Well, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into our main topics for tonight. All right. Let's go. We focused a lot on stimulants last week. So let's kind of jump into, and I'm pretty comfortable with y'all understanding kind of what stimulants do. Let's jump into the alcohol portion here. This will be kind of a compare and contrast. Okay, so we see a human body and the organs you can see through. So let's say that here in my cup, instead of some black tea, I have some black tea and rum. And so it's about 75% rum and 25% tea. And just because I'm trying to get through the day, it's been a long day and a long week, so hits my lips. Probably see me cringe a little worse than that. Then what happens after it hits my lips? I'm giving you clues by the. I do swallow it. Where does it go then? It does go to my belly. Then what happens to the alcohol? It starts to absorb. Good. So I'm hearing it it's entering my body. It's starting to. So how long is it going to take me to? Well, looks like could be a vodka bottle. Let's just say I take 3 pretty good swigs off of some 80 proof vodka. I'm going to do the same thing what Chris just said. How long is it going to take for me to start experiencing some effects of that? 5 or 10 minutes, especially if it's like this illustration here. I don't have any food in my stomach. Let's say that I just ate like a pretty decent sized meal. How long would that take? Roughly. Probably a little longer. Yeah, probably 15. So a lot of times, what do alcohol? Maybe up to 30. For that, it's going to take longer for it to absorb. So why would that be important to note if you're an alcoholic?
I don't think I've ever taken a shot of vodka and had it take 30 minutes to hit me.
Well, here's my thoughts on that. So let's say you had a big steak dinner. Let's say you had a nice ribeye and a potato, and took a couple of shots of vodka.
5 to 10 minutes probably.
5 to 10 minutes.
That's about what it takes me, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe my tolerance isn't that low.
Okay. No, I'm not saying you're lightweight. That's not. No.
Pick on me?
No, that's not my intention.
I guess I've never seen anybody take 30 minutes to fill it.
Folks that are professional drinkers, and I say that loosely, but folks that are alcoholics that have alcohol use problems, do they like to drink on a full stomach, or why not, Jennifer? Why don't they drink on a full stomach?
I guess because they don't feel the effects of the alcohol
As quickly.
Yeah.
As quickly. Actually, and Chris, thank you for your feedback. Most of the alcohol, when a person consumes alcohol, is not absorbed through the stomach. 85%, and this will be on test, 85% of when you consume alcohol, 85% of it goes through the small intestine. So if you had some food, blocking its entry into the small intestine, it's going to take a little bit. It'll seep in. I agree with you, Chris. I mean, if I took a shot right now, it'd make my head warm. I mean, because you're absorbing it through your membranes and, even a little bit in your throat. 15% is through your stomach, 85% is through your small intestine. So it's just important to note, because problem drinkers tend not to eat if they're deciding to drink, they're going to drink. They're not going to want to mess with the food because it's going to mess with their buzz. Okay, so it goes. So now what's happening? It's in the small intestine. Now what happens to it? Still getting absorbed. It goes to the liver. How does it get to the liver?
Sure.
You're right. It does eventually go there. Kayla, where's it at? Where is it at once it goes and it gets absorbed through the small intestine?
I don't know.
Okay. We got the missing alcohol. A case of the missing vodka. Where did it go? Don't make it too hard.
Your bloodstream?
Your bloodstream, yes. It's making your blood alcohol content change in your bloodstream. And the reason that it's having an effect is because it starts to have an effect up here. So again, I use the body of water illustration here. And what do you notice? You can see underneath the water and on top of it. What's the main thing that strikes you besides the clarity of the water? It's pretty smooth. It's pretty, it's almost smooth as glass. If you were skiing on it, it'd be a wonderful day to water ski on that. But maybe not when you fell and hit the really shallow bottom. But anyway, your body likes homeostasis. I'm referring to that balance, that same state we talked about last week. And so same kind of thing. When a person's feeling that buzz, I've taken my 3 or 4 shots of vodka. What am I feeling when I'm intoxicated? Good. That's an acceptable answer. A person does feel good. People don't drink because it makes them feel bad. I mean, if you're going to be a substance use counselor, that's kind of step one is acknowledging that people are getting some sort of benefit from their use. So, relaxed. Absolutely. Good, Molly. What else?
Well, I think initially you have more energy.
You might have a little more energy, might get stimulated a little bit. What about like your lips? Numb. Yeah, my lips do get numb after I've drank a little bit. How's your coordination?
Not great.
Coordination, your speech maybe gets slurred a little bit. How does your alertness? How good is your alertness after about 4 or 5 shots? Yeah, alertness is coming down a little bit, especially as the alcohol, it takes a little while to get in the bloodstream. It's not like somebody that smokes it or snorts it. It takes a little while, so it's a gradual kind of effect. And so, eventually if somebody drinks enough, what's going to happen?
Pass out.
They're going to pass out. They're going to lose consciousness. So, and again, I apologize for the sound effects here. They're going to probably come up again. I need to take these off. It's really to keep adolescents' attention. But we go into a little more detail with the adults. So yeah, you guys nailed it. Numb, relaxed, sleepy, hungry. We missed the heart. Yeah, your heart rate, your heartbeat is going to be, your blood pressure is going to go down a little bit. Your respiration rate is going to slow. Your heart rate's going to slow. And you're, like Chris said, you're going to have some euphoria. All right, so then you notice that the tidal wave here has a very abrupt drop. That's where the liver kicks in. Jennifer foreshadowed it. So the liver gets rid of it, metabolizes the alcohol, takes it out of your bloodstream, and then your body tries to adjust to life without alcohol. So then we just found out what the intoxication is. What's withdrawal from alcohol? What's it like to have a hangover, bad hangover? What'd you say, Molly?
Dehydrated?
Dehydrated, yeah.
Headaches.
Headaches.
Messy.
What'd you say, Chris?
Messy.
It's messy. Could be nauseous. Yeah. What else? Achy. Oh. Do people sleep really well when they have a hangover? Alcohol, a person may pass out, but that person is not dreaming. REM sleep is very important to us to get refreshed. It inhibits REM sleep because it inhibits basically everything in your brain. So folks aren't sleeping real well when they're coming off of alcohol. It may lay around and be woozy, but generally they're not sleeping well. So let's take a look at withdrawal. Achy, stressed, anxious. Yeah, there's some anxiety that goes in there. Oh, awake, blood pressure's higher. Some people need medical detox for coming off of alcohol. I didn't put DTs on there, delirium tremens, but some people really honestly need to have some IV fluids, some B12. I mean, some medical attention to make sure their body doesn't overreact. So the dysphoria, that's the really negative feeling. So let's talk about why that is. What happens to our brain? Again, we're going to talk about our normal cell. You've got the cell membrane there, the nucleus. Glad this is all fresh on everybody's minds from last week. Who's been to the doctor lately? Anybody go to the doctor? Okay, Molly, you went to the doctor. Did they have to take blood or give you a shot or anything?
Yep, no, they just tested me for
Oh.
swab up my nose.
Okay, tested you for flu. Yeah. Oh, did you have flu?
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, well, I'm glad you didn't have to get a shot. Everybody recall the last time you got a shot from the doctor. What's the thing that they do first before they give you a shot?
Alcohol.
Yeah, they rub you down with what?
Alcohol.
With alcohol. And so why do they rub you down with alcohol?
Well, I guess to sterilize it.
Yes, absolutely. They want to sterilize you, like from what? From bacteria, right? So let's say this cell here is not one of our human cells, but it's a bacterial cell. So they're rubbing that alcohol on you to kill these bacterial cells. Alcohol works by breaking down that cell membrane, dissolving it, and dispersing the cell, dispensing of it. You're done. The thing about it is, alcohol is, a very powerful solvent. It starts to do the same thing in your body. It's toxic. I mean, alcohol is a toxin. This is a horrible screenshot or picture. What strikes you about the picture here? Yeah, the little girl, face planted on the springs. What is the mechanism of action? Just ignore the girl. That was to kind of get people's attention. I think she is okay. This was a Google search, but think about what's the mechanism of this action in this trampoline? What's making this trampoline go? Kayla, why does a trampoline work?
Because you jump on it.
You jump on it, and what makes you bounce?
The springs.
Yes.
Like spring back up.
The springs all are pretty taut. You have to have some tension there. And so it's the same thing goes for neurotransmission. We didn't go deep into the action potential, but that cell membrane, especially that, we talked a little bit about your axons. Alcohol starts to break down that cell membrane. And so it'd be like taking, the equivalent of this would be like taking the springs off of this trampoline. And so if you did that, would this trampoline be very good at conducting energy, conducting the bouncing of these kids? Alcohol basically does the same thing to your brain cells. It reduces their ability to conduct electricity and to make that message, keep those messages flowing. So, because it starts to break down the membrane. Now, obviously it doesn't break down the membrane on all your cells, or, if I literally had rum in this and I took one sip, you wouldn't have a teacher anymore. So, we'll talk about why it doesn't kill people. But it does sometimes, though. Remember, it does. So, neurotransmission. Here's our electrochemical process once again. You're going to hear a little explosion. So it doesn't really necessarily work with the vacuum. We talked about blocking reuptake last week. What alcohol does is it really messes with the membrane where it doesn't conduct electricity. So you see I just zapped up the electrical bolt there. Basically, it's shutting that down. It's shutting down your brain's ability to communicate with each other. So it's inhibitory in many places. There are a few places in the brain where, like Chris alluded to, you get a dopamine release. All right. So moving on a little bit. Here's our brain again. Here's not our brain on drugs. It's our brain on alcohol. This is very generally speaking. And I use general terms just because we don't have a semester to talk about each one of these substances. Neuropharm is a good class to take to learn specifically about this kind of action. But generally speaking, when a person starts to drink alcohol, and I had my 2 shots, alcohol starts to affect the brain from the outside in. So again, if you recall last week, the brain kind of, the basic functions are down here. This is all wired up when we're infants, and our brain kind of grows out like a tree. And so the inverse happens with alcohol. It starts to work on the outside. And so very quickly, what is affected when a person starts to drink, take 2 or 3 shots?
Thoughts?
Yes, thoughts. Why would a person want to ingest alcohol? If it's affecting your thoughts, why do you want to drink if it's affecting your thoughts?
Get away from
Ding, ding, ding. Yes, $64,000 one. To get away from them, absolutely, Tanya. So if I'm thinking today about the mass of stuff that has accumulated on my desk in the past 2 weeks, where I've been out of town 4 days and had an audit today, and I have about 3 inches of paper that I can barely see. My anxiety level, I could just, where we did the relaxation last week, the grounding, my anxiety level just went up a couple of notches just thinking about that. And so it's an easy fix if I just go home and say, hey, here's a couple of shots of vodka. Because literally what will happen is it starts to shut down those outward thoughts, those little pinging, stressful things. If folks have ingested alcohol, now I'm not really thinking about all that stuff. Because you're not thinking about as much, because it's starting to shut your brain down. So then I go ahead and, it's not Wednesday, so I'm not going to go to Scooters, but if it were, I'd go to Scooters and have maybe 3 or 4 more drinks. What then starts to become affected? Judgment. So, 6 drinks or so, 4 or 5, depends on tolerance, 3 maybe. Your judgment starts to become impaired. Man, I can drive home. I'm good. I drive better. I drive better after I've had a few. If you do counsel folks, it's a good time to mention it's really not advisable to counsel people that are under the influence. And the reason why, and not just talking alcohol, but the reason why is they're not in the normal state of mind. There's a good chance that the alcoholic will not be able to remember what you're talking about, but also will not give you normal thoughts that while they're out from underneath the influence of the substance. So same would go with marijuana. Same would go with obviously meth. you'll notice that your cerebellum is out here on the outside, kind of. Even though it's down low. So the more that a person drinks, the more that a person's movement is impaired. That's why our studies really do indicate that a person's movement's impaired pretty early on. We have a 0.08 legal limit, 0.08 referring to what?
Blood alcohol.
Percentage of blood alcohol. Thank you, Chris. Absolutely. The danger is what? If a person, if this is all vodka and I tip it up and down it like I'm Belushi in Animal House. What's the danger in that? The poison. The poison factor comes in because literally alcohol has made it past. You have a pretty good defense system that Jennifer talked about. I said, what happens if a person drinks too much? And you said, they pass out.
Yes.
They pass out. They lose consciousness. A person who loses consciousness can't drink anymore. So it's a pretty good defense mechanism. But a person who drinks, I'm going to drink 21 shots on my birthday, probably not a good idea. Because if you do them all at one sitting, there's a good chance you'll hit down here to your medulla and impact your breathing and your heart rate. I treated a child, 12-year-old, in Meadow Lake, was hospitalized after they thought he was trying to commit suicide. And so I had worked with people with drug and alcohol. I'd worked in the rehab and worked with the adolescent drug court, so they referred the young man to me for an assessment, and he's hospitalized in Meadow Lake. 12, little kid. I mean, maybe 90 pounds. I mean, wasn't much of, just a little guy. So I talked to him, and there's some pretty sly 12-year-olds, walking around these days. It seems like kids get mature faster and younger and younger age. This young man was not so savvy. I could tell pretty quickly. He was just kind of like a deer in the headlights talking to him. It was the day after he'd kind of sobered up and everything. They charcoaled him at the ER when they admitted him, got him stabilized, and got him to Meadow Lake. And so I'm talking to him and said, well, what happened? Tell me a little bit about what happened. Well, I don't remember a whole lot. Well, tell me what you do remember. Well, my friends and I, this is back before they built, well, this is dating this story, but this is back before Garfield School was built and the Armory was still there here in Enid. Me and my friends were back behind the Armory, and they got some cinnamon, they got some hot damn, which is cinnamon schnapps, and they had some Jack Daniels. And he said, well, we were taking shots of cinnamon schnapps, and I had 10 shots of cinnamon schnapps and then 6 shots of Jack Daniels. And I don't remember anything. Basically what happened was that the police found him passed out behind the Armory. And, in a bad way. I mean, his body was shutting down. So he was lucky that he didn't die, not being 90 pounds. So in just a minute, we'll kind of see where that young man, my thoughts were you trying to hurt? No, I wasn't trying to hurt myself. And I believe it. I mean, he was just literally didn't know. I didn't know me and my friends were doing this. So here's what this young man did. You see the blood alcohol chart. If you go over to 90 pounds, and you follow that down to 10 drinks, which shot basically equivalent of a drink, 0.51. Anybody know the lethal dose for alcohol?
0.5.
Thank you, Ashley. It is 0.5. So he was on his way to death, and he was on his way to dying. So we'll get to how you identify that in just a minute. I wished I would have included a different chart. I'm going to talk about it anyway. Blood alcohol charts are available online. If you have a young adult, a teen, many times, I had another teen. He said he would black out every time he drank. And I said, well, what, kid from a little rural town, were you meaning to black out? No, I said, well, what did you drink? Well, I drink about 3/4 of a bottle of vodka each time I said, do you know what you're doing? He said, and so he really hadn't ever seen a blood alcohol chart or had any idea kind of what, he was just kind of, he said, well, my dad drinks a lot. I try to keep up with him. And so 18-year-old, he had gotten out of Norman treatment facility because he had OD'd. And we've had some alcohol deaths from Enid. Blood alcohol calculator. So I really think this is important because they don't really cover this in school. They try to do more abstinent related stuff. At least the schools I went to didn't cover this. So if you want to, this is all rehab related. I think this is important things to give your clients, especially if they're younger. Come on, just want a chart. Is this one gonna calculator? I don't want the chart. I don't want the calculator. Oh, I asked for the calculator. Okay, so you'll notice here that they have two separate charts. They have one for males and another one for females. So let's compare 160-pound male versus 160-pound female. So 160-pound male, what point do they go over the legal limit? At 4 drinks, right? So everybody can kind of observe. Molly, are you able to see that? How about you, Kayla? You back there?
Yeah. I
Okay.
was trying to pull it up on my computer.
Okay. At 160 pounds, what is that male's blood alcohol level? 0.09. So it's just, yeah. So let's compare that to a 160-pound female. At what point is she over the legal limit? 3. She hits 0.09 at 3 drinks. Why is that? They both weigh the same. And I thought, I'm not, I can't even. Anyway, why wouldn't men and women be equal? They're the same body weight, same mass. Okay. The reason why that is, men have become equipped with a special enzyme in our stomachs that break down alcohol before it gets to our small intestine. Women do not have this enzyme in their stomachs. It's not endemic to women. So don't try to keep up with males. If you've ever it's just impossible. It's genetically impossible. And I think that's important for young females to know too, that it's just going to affect you more. It just honestly is. It is, and it's a biological reason. If you think I don't have an evolutionary story to, maybe men ingested it more in history. I don't know. I just don't have a reason for that. But we do know that men metabolize it better. Sorry, I had to share that. All right, so which one of these has the most alcohol in it? Okay, Chris is voting for the one on the right, which is the shot. It's like shot of tequila because it's got the lime next to it.
They're all equal.
Jennifer says it's all equal. It's a trick question, Taylor, because I think I've seen this slide before. You're right. You're right. That was a trick question. Chris was right in that it has the highest percentage. of alcohol. Jennifer was right in that if you go to a bar and you order a drink, it's supposed to have roughly the same alcohol content. Now, take for instance the screwdriver in the middle. It says 20% alcohol, the orange and vodka there. If somebody's at home and mixing their own drinks, throw these percentages out the window. It's like the 75% mix I said with my tea here. But if a person goes to a bar, and they're all supposed to have about a half an ounce of alcohol. All right, so here's your liver, and I gave the answer away. So if your liver gets rid of alcohol at a rate of half an ounce per hour, how long does it take a person to sober up after 5 drinks?
5 hours.
Yeah, 5 hours. Basically a drink per hour. Give it some lead time, maybe 6 hours because it's still metabolizing through your stomach and your small intestine. It takes a little while to get in your system. So I think, again, that's important for people to know. If they're really thinking about driving responsibly, behaving responsibly, we need to educate them about if you're going to be responsible. I took a little bit of criticism. Why do you want to tell these, because I was treating juveniles in drug court, why do you want to tell them exactly what's happening in their body? Why wouldn't I? Well,
Depend on tolerance.
it does depend on tolerance, you're right. But no, actually I take that back. You would be able to tolerate a higher blood alcohol content. If tolerance would basically being able to say, I've had 3 drinks, I've got a 0.07, but I don't act because I'm used to it.
But doesn't your liver produce more of the enzymes to break down alcohol in drink?
Faster. Yeah, it does to a degree. We'll talk about that. I'm getting good foreshadowing though. So 0.5 ounces in an hour. The thing was that kids would then come in the next morning and do their UAs, and they'd be like, they'd have a 0.25 still in their system, 0.025. Ah, man. I said, well, why are you still drinking at point? I thought, you knew how fast it's getting out of your system. Why did you drink that much? Do you have control over this? By giving people information, if they can't behave responsibly with the real information, with the real facts, you have something very powerful over them. In counseling, you have reality. You knew that you had 4 hours to sober up, yet you had 2 more drinks. So tell me about that. How much control do you have? I just used a little motivational interviewing there, by the way, at the last 2 questions, for those of you that are doing that. There's your liver after a couple of years of drinking heavily. Anyway, so how much is too much? And I use generalities here, and Chris and I kind of talked a little bit about tolerance, but at 0.08, people are feeling a buzz. At 0.1, normal thoughts are, and I would argue at 0.08, they're being affected. Because a person, like I said, you're not thinking about that pile of paper on your desk. At 0.15, your judgment is really starting to get affected. I would argue, again, it's probably a little bit affected before then, especially without a tolerance. About 0.25, people start to lose consciousness. At a 0.35 level, really, you're in a poisoning state. It's really a toxic state. You're doing some damage to your brain's ability to communicate. And then at 0.5, that is where most of the population dies. So how much alcohol is 0.5 if you're thinking about your blood concentration? Is that a great deal of alcohol in your system? Relatively speaking, it is. But if you think about those percentages, your blood is not even 1% alcohol. Your blood is basically half of 1% alcohol, and that will kill you. So alcohol is a very powerful substance. 0.1% a tenth of 1%, you're really impaired. So it's like, think about the doctor, the nurse rubbing down your skin and killing those bacterial cells. Same kind of effect. Doesn't wipe them out. It does over time. Anybody heard of Korsakoff syndrome? Wet brain. What happens with that? It's a really horrible. I have a really close relative through marriage that has drank basically every day for 25 years. That person will tell me the same story 3 times within an hour. He has impaired his ability to remember. Korsakoff syndrome is really a qualitative impairment on your memory and your brain's ability to function with specifically to memory. There are holes that appear, kind of like the meth kind of syndrome where you're missing gray matter. You are killing brain cells. So let's go over this. This is an important concept if you're doing substances or not doing them but learning about them. Effective dose versus lethal dose. What would effective dose be?
Just getting the buzz.
Yes, just enough to feel it, to the effective amount. Lethal dose, obviously, is enough to kill you. Effective dose goes up with tolerance. Obviously, Chris and I kind of talked about that. Does lethal dose change?
I don't think so.
Chris says no. Anybody else got a different argument?
I don't know, maybe.
The jury's out on substances on this. You see a lot more overdoses per person with heroin. Heroin has this strange knack of really getting a quick tolerance. And there's been some evidence that says, well, people then, their lethal dose then goes up too. But there's also been people where they've had a big tolerance and taken a same amount that they had during another dosing and killed themselves through overdose. So that's hard. That's a hard question to answer, and it has to do with our metabolism. It has to do with the way our body's reacting in that day. I mean, it's qualitatively hard to put your arms around. So what I go with clients is telling them that no, your lethal dose is going to, although they're anecdotal, well, this person had a 0.4, blood alcohol level, and they're walking around because they were such an alcoholic and they didn't die. But anyway, 0.5 is, I'll stick to that. The person's going to die. And I'm gonna stick to it doesn't change. ED50, these are important pharmaceutical terms. Probably see these on a test. ED50 stands for effective dose for 50% of the population. LD50 stands for the lethal dose for 50% of the population. 50% of people, if they're exposed to that level of alcohol, will die. That's the 0.50. And that's it. Questions about alcohol?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I heard this and I have no idea if it's true, but if you drink too much, and we talked about how you pass out as a defense mechanism.
Yes.
Doesn't the base of your stomach also shut off, and then it forces? That's why you throw up. Is that not correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of like if you're especially working with teens and people are throwing up. Well, yeah, man, I keep on drinking. No, your body just told you you're about to die. You've had too much. By throwing it up, it's telling you that you poison yourself. So, yes, thank you. Good point. I talked to an alcohol or a lady who had a severe alcohol use problem 3 months ago, and that was her pattern of use. I drink until I throw up, and I keep drinking. And so I did the whole blood alcohol thing with her, and I don't think she'd ever really heard that, but A lot of times people just base their lives on assumptions that aren't true or that they've seen, and it's just a lot of what we do is educate people. And I'm not saying that's all you do is sit and preach to them, because they'll not come back, but at certain points, giving them information is important. Do you want to go into the next subject, or do you want to take a break? Let's take about 5 minutes. People are looking a little gassed. And we'll come back. And I don't think we'll get to everything tonight. We might have to just carry it over a little bit. I had been the first to recommend the use of cocaine in 1885, and this recommendation had brought serious reproaches down on me. Well, it should, because it induces depression. While it may have alleviated immediately, you're wiping out, we know, your brain's ability to experience pleasure over time. So is there anything that you can think of today that's maybe similar to some of these legalization versus not stances that we've witnessed in the past few slides?
The biggest use acts for, they used self-assisted therapy, didn't it?
In what, ecstasy?
Yeah.
That's, they did a lot with LSD in the 60s. They did a lot. Actually, the professor who taught my neuropharmacology and biopsychology class he graduated from Berkeley with his doctorate, and he was involved in the experiments, for the LSD experiments. He was one of the subjects. So we're going to talk about hallucinogens next, and you'll get a unique perspective from me because of that influence. But anyway, we kind of go back and forth. Most of these substances that we're looking at are derived from what? Coca plant, ephedra plant, poppy seed, marijuana plant. You talk about mushrooms. You talk about most of these substances that we're selling were derived from plants. Whether we're selling them, buying them, making them illegal, making them illegal. It's just we synthesize them and we make them into something different. There are different kinds of opiates. Morphine, heroin, methadone. We identified these last time. Dilaudid, Demerol, codeine, Lortabs, Oxycontin, oxycodone, Toluen. There's others out there. Here's what people can expect when they're under the influence: analgesia, pain relief; euphoria. There's some dopamine action in there. Sedation. We already hinted on you're not going to breathe as heavily or as quickly. Be careful of additive effects. If a person's taking a barbiturate, a benzo, drinking alcohol, and combining substances, many people can overdose very easily, because all of those substances also do what? Depress breathing, depress heart rate. So all those that I just named, all those depressing. So remember when we grouped categorically our substances, those opiates and those depressants, they do similar things, and if you put them together, they're going to act even more powerfully. So that's important to know when you're talking to your clients too. Suppression of cough. One thing you can tell if your client is very high or intoxicated on an opiate is they will have pinpoint pupils. They'll have, the black part of their eye will just be barely discernible. That parasympathetic nervous system just really kicks in and shuts things down. It's basically shut. If you're taking a stimulant, your pupil is going to dilate because it's going to let in light because it wants you to be active. If you're taking something that's depressing you or shutting your system down, pupil gets really little. Pupillary constriction, nausea and vomiting. A big byproduct, and I had talked to a young man who said he went many days without a bowel movement. Constipation and dehydration, decreased propulsion. That can cause a lot of pain in people, and it can could be a motivator for a person quitting too. Some of these you get some really profound effects here in just a minute. It releases histamine, causes itching and asthma. Some people are very allergic to taking opiates. And here's the bad part. Of any classification of substances that we will talk about, these are the worst withdrawal symptoms. So if a person is addicted to pain pills, just stop taking them. Here's what they're going to face. Lack of sleep. So once that craving hits them and they're feeling bad, they're not going to be sleeping it off like meth or cocaine. Increased sensitivity to pain. General malaise. Just feeling, not right. Restlessness. Man, I just don't feel right. Craving. Man, I know what would make me feel better would be another Lortab or whatever it might be. Extreme anxiety. Something's just not right. Especially coming down, immediate withdrawal. Fever. Chills. It says at the bottom, intense aches and pains. Think about, because of remember, intoxication and withdrawal are the opposites. So you're intoxicated on these substances, you're feeling no pain. So think about your worst flu and multiply that by about 3 times, and that's what it's like coming off of heroin. Just, writhing around, hurting every inch of somebody, vomiting, cramping. It's coming out of both ends. Explosive diarrhea. Don't go, a detox unit where they're coming off of heroin. That's a nasty place to be. Yes.
You see train spotting?
I have seen train spotting. Yeah. That's appropriate. What's that, Molly?
I've just seen the clips and it just makes my stomach hurt.
So yeah, there's some explosive diarrhea that happens. It's not a good place to be if you're around a detox unit. Panting, it decreased. It's the opposite. I mean, this is a very clear, classic way of identifying intoxication versus withdrawal. And that's why people keep using, is because I'm going to bottom out. I don't want to feel that. So where's my next hit coming from? Where's my next pill? Oh my gosh, I don't want to feel this bad. Somebody help me. And you think about people these days, a lot of young people will snort opiates, will crush pills up and snort them. I've seen the withdrawals get just equally as intense on somebody that's coming off of heroin. You think about that, is because a pill that's supposed to be released for 4 or 5 hours in your stomach and intestine is just hitting your bloodstream all at once. It's the equivalent of taking some morphine or some heroin. Tolerance is rapid and pervasive. We talked a little bit about tolerance with alcohol. Why would that be? What'd you say, Jennifer?
You know what?
Oh, why would you have really quick and pervasive, powerful tolerance to because like somebody could take, 1 week could take Lortabs for a week for a broken arm or something, and then the next week take that same pill and it's doing nothing. The same way it's like the morphine addict. Take a shot this week and it numbed me out, and next week it's not doing anything.
So it's because your liver's really good at making those enzymes to break it down.
It's your body's adjusting. Your body likes the balance. And so for you to feel pain, let's say this is a hot burner and I'm just chilling out here and got my hand up against this hot burner. You guys smell something burning? It's important for us to perceive pain because we get hurt and we don't use this part of our body anymore. If we can't perceive pain, we will perish because we'll eventually destroy ourselves. So the body adjusts to this because pain, being able to sense pain, is survival oriented. You have to. It's very, very good about adjusting. But again, that lethal dose, especially this substance, especially the opiates, effective dose and lethal dose can get dangerously close. So it's easy for somebody to overdose. Dependence. For when somebody's in a dependent state, they're avoiding negative withdrawal symptoms. They're needing the drug to feel normal, kind of like with meth, and not able to benefit from pain relief. Let's say somebody does get in a wreck, they get severely injured, they go to the hospital. They're not going to be able to get the pain relief from the drugs that they're trying to administer them. Long-term use, same thing. You burn out neural pathways. You see some neural pruning, some dendritic pruning. You do see some brain damage and chromosome damage, particularly with, there's been more studies with heroin. I don't think, there's not been a lot of studies with the really quick-acting method of chopping up pills, and I haven't seen those studies out. But I have seen, the ones for the heroin because it's been documented for so long. So here's the brain mechanisms involved. Your opioid receptors, already talked about them being in the spinal cord and brainstem. Substantial brain reactivity. Here's your treatment. Let's wrap this up. If you're treating somebody, it's important. These are important steps, and please remember these, because if you're treating somebody with opiates and they've got opiate dependence, that person can be in an unsafe state physically. Number one goal is safe detox. Some people can get up to 10, 15 pills of Lortab a day, ingesting it. If they quit cold turkey, if you're a person, you just quit cold turkey. If you're, nope, that's not gonna be good. We need to get them either to an ER or another place where they can be medically detoxed. Naloxone, which we don't have this text, but it's a morphine antagonist. It will block. If you have somebody that's in overdose state, they're actually starting to give this to law enforcement. We have an initiative from our governor. One of the initiatives that I agree with that she has is that they're trying to administer to every law enforcement emergency responder to have this naloxone nasal spray, where if it hits your bloodstream, it blocks all actions of opiates immediately. It's a very powerful antagonist. In other words, it'll block the receptor sites and it won't work anymore. So literally, you'll have somebody passed out because they've OD'd on morphine and they'll wake up.
There's a video on YouTube of somebody doing that.
Of somebody doing that?
Yeah, I think it was YouTube, I saw it.
Okay.
And she went from being completely blacked out to just like, have you ever seen Pulp Fiction?
Yes, with the epinephrine, shot.
It's similar to that. I mean, the way she just wakes up.
That's what they've saved since they've done that. They've actually saved 12 people. They've saved, and that's just been it's in the past couple of months. They've saved 12 people. One of them was a pastor in Tulsa that had accidentally taken too many of his prescriptions. And so it wasn't just, you think, well, that they're just drug addicts and they respond, they're passed out. And this is, sometimes accidental overdoses happen. Medication-assisted treatment. I don't really recommend this for a lot of substances, but you may consider this for somebody that's having a difficult time. I'm not a big fan of the methadone. Never really treated anybody that's gone, but I just have heard of bad methadone stories that it's almost just like a replacement for morphine or heroin. Naltrexone, there's some other brands that are listed up there for morphine, but that can help block and also help alleviate some of those withdrawal symptoms that people experience. Rehab, I think it's good, again, the education about effective dose and lethal dose. You might consider outpatient, and if they can't get into a safe place, some transitional living. Refer them to a place where they're going to live in a community of people that are in recovery. And that's it. All right. Any questions about opioids? That was a very quick snapshot of those drugs. All right, let's talk about hallucinogens. And to talk about hallucinogens, I'm going to talk about a person that I knew in college, and they told me one time about an experience they had, and so they'd never done anything other than like marijuana or alcohol, and so they one day decided, well, a friend of theirs had some mushrooms, some magic mushrooms, and so they talked about, well, they were very nervous. They didn't know what to expect, but they like, yeah, okay, this is my friend. I'll go along with them. So they went over to a little garage apartment and went upstairs in this little garage apartment and said it was really kind of a crummy looking place, but there's a little Chihuahua dog there, and there were a couple people they didn't know and their friend, and so they started to talk. Somebody gave them a beer. They started drinking a beer and to chill out and relieve that anxiety a little bit, and so they started to pass out these magic mushrooms, and so they were different. They were different than any magic mushroom the person had ever seen. They had big brown caps on them, not like the little salad mushrooms that are a little round, and it was more like a shiitake, big, long-looking mushroom, dark brown, and so they passed these out, and they gave everybody quite a few. I mean, they gave my friend 5 of them, and so my friend, being very nervous about the whole thing, decided to kind of take them one by one. The taste was described as kind of bitter, reminiscent of a normal mushroom, but just a little different, a little more bitter, a little more pungent. And so they decided that, okay, well, they would eat 4 of them. So they ate 4, and expecting something to happen. Nothing seemed to happen. And so a little more time elapsed, and almost getting full, eating these 4 big mushrooms. So they didn't take the last one. They decided to put it in their pocket. So, some time elapsed, and people were talking, and he said the dog started getting nervous and barking at him, and so it made him very uncomfortable. Just was starting to feel uneasy. So they decided to leave. They left, and they went to some apartments. This was at the old Phillips University, which is now the NOC here in Enid. So they went to the university apartments and decided to chill out, and nothing was really happening. So the guy ended up eating the last mushroom, and just described a feeling of just feeling weird, maybe a little euphoric. So there was some giggling that went on and some laughing, and so it was suggested that they go outside, because it was it was a February night, and so they went outside and decided to walk around, and so they walked across the Phillips golf course. So if you've driven by Enid and driven on the east side of town there out on 412, and you look up and you see a Northern Oklahoma sign, and there's a really nice public, no, it's not a very nice golf course, but it's out there on the south side, north side of the road. So they walk a while, and they come to a little creek and cross a bridge, and this friend looks and sees something that looks like 1,000 glow sticks. Those little glow sticks you pop and they turn green, and looks like somebody has poured literally 1,000 of them out on the ground. And so they go over there to inspect. What in the world? What is this? And they get there. Oh, it was just a light. The light was just shining down and just hitting the ground. It was really nothing. And then so there was a car that was driving by, and so they look up, and this is when it was described that changes started seeming to take place, because the taillights were in the right field of vision while the headlights were here, and the car looked like it was stretched out like a clown car, like it was made out of silly putty. And so they, at this point, the guy started getting really disoriented, and so decided, okay, I need to take a few steps back and try to orient myself. So decided to take a look and see what time is this? When did this start? So I can kind of keep track. So they look at the watch, and both hands on the watch. It was one of the old watches that has 2 hands. Just kind of spun like a Salvador Dali painting. Time didn't really seem to make sense. So the the protagonist of the story here decides to look around a little bit more and try to get their bearings. And so they look up at a tree, and the tree appears to be moving a little bit, although there's no real leaves on it. And there are stars behind it, and they're kind of moving a little reminiscent to a Van Gogh painting. They're just not quite staying in the same spot. So at this point, the friend, the experienced friend, decides let's go. Suggests that they walk across a little pipe that's sticking over the creek, and that was shot down. That was not a smart idea. So they decided, well, let's walk back. This is getting a little scary. So let's walk back. So they walk back. They're walking back, and the campus security person was driving around and shining their light across the golf course. So the friend of mine decided to duck down. Obviously, this is not a time to talk to an authority figure. So they duck down and are creeping along in this little low spot. And the other friend keeps on walking. And so a few moments elapse, and the friend talks about just feeling very vulnerable. And it's like, okay, I can't be alone. That's way worse than encountering the authority figure. So they start to run, and they describe the feeling of being on a treadmill and just being like in Scooby-Doo like motion, where you just kind of run in place for quite a while. And so the friend runs for what seems like probably 10 minutes, maybe a 5K, and catches up to the other friend. Exhausted, he describes, okay, please don't do that. Please, let's just get back. Let's just get back to the apartment. So it's a cold February night, and at that moment, the guy described putting his hands in his coat pocket and feeling as though the pockets were this deep up to his shoulders. And so this is a pretty weird experience. And so eventually they get back to the room and the apartment there, and time appears to kind of go in time lapse, where you'll watch like some stop action photography where somebody's here and then they're over here. It just, things weren't tracking very smoothly in a vision field. And so eventually the discussion was that the sense of sight was somehow sacrificed, that everything kind of went black, and that this person had a very bad experience with perceiving that time was stopped. They may have died, did not really know what was going on. So the hallucinogens, and eventually that person came to, but it was a few hours probably after that. That experience was probably induced a lot by the influences at the college at the time, but it was what it was. Hallucinogens are a very different type of substance. They don't share. If you look at all of the classified substances, they're the only ones that don't have a withdrawal, besides inhalants. Inhalants don't have a. So if you're dealing with somebody that's on hallucinogens, they are not going to necessarily experience withdrawal. They are going to experience the need for sleep. They'll be exhausted after their trips. There are several different kinds: mushrooms, LSD, peyote, ecstasy, PCP. I would rank them in order of potency. LSD is very potent. Peyote is very. I would probably classify these two together as far as potency. Mushrooms typically, it just kind of depends. Those are not usually as potent. Although the person who ingested the 5, that level of the substance, that amount, probably would have caused some acute distress. Uses in history. You talk about ancient cultures. The Navajo tribe in Arizona still is allowed to use peyote in religious rites. You do see uses of that in some indigenous cultures. Some of the hallucinogens by the medicine people to discern proper behaviors, proper directions for the tribe. The intoxication. Here's what happens with intoxication. It is affecting your serotonin. So we alluded to that last week. If I were to put the chemical structure of it up there, it's indiscernible from your serotonin in your brain. And so it's really overloading. So when somebody is going through a trip, it's because their senses are experiencing information at a way different rate than they normally do. In other words, they're taking all of this, where we might be able to discern, like, okay, now I'm looking at that sign, now I'm looking over that sign. Things begin to become blurred, and just there's too much stimulation to the senses. So you have this time-space distortion. Time appears to go very, very slowly for somebody. So if you have somebody who's having a panic attack due to a bad hallucinogenic trip, one of the things to do would be to try to get them to implement a relaxation technique, implement kind of a grounding, some breathing, some very minute focus. If you can bring them back to, okay, just press your right heel into the ground, take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Those kind of things will work. You have some very strong sensory distortion, and all 5 senses are really affected. In your brain, there's a superior colliculus and an inferior colliculus, and they're right back here next to your brainstem. The superior colliculus processes your vision. The inferior colliculus processes your hearing. LSD, mushrooms, the hallucinogens affect those two very, very a lot. And so sometimes you'll have a synesthesia, a combining of senses. People will see music, will hear something that they're looking at when it's not making sounds. It sounds very, very convoluted, but it's a real. Those are real sensations. People are typically on emotional roller coasters. Bad trips, unless they're ingesting something exotic, maybe like bath salts, bad trips, or maybe PCP. Bad trips are generally due to panic attacks. If they're taking a hallucinogen that's not somehow otherwise toxic to the body, LSD, mushrooms, those are typically only working at serotonin sites, and so they're gonna have panic attacks. Not necessarily that their heart is increasing, not because of the drug, but because of the person's reaction and anxiety because of the drug. People who are intoxicated typically experience dysphoria. There's not a real rush to take, like with a pill, like with cocaine, even like a cigarette. I mean, there's not a real rush with these. So people typically don't become physically dependent. There's no withdrawal symptoms either. People that are dependent on hallucinogens are more psychologically dependent on them. Side effects, you notice I crossed out withdrawal because they do not have withdrawal symptoms. Side effects, people are going to want to sleep. They're going to be exhaustion. They're going to have exhaustion. And they're going to experience flashbacks. Now, flashbacks in a drug, a class designed to deter people are going to be made out to be scary. Well, they're going to come into a flashback and time is going to suddenly, stand still and things are going to start moving. That's not necessarily a flashback. A flashback would be like, like that car illustration that was stretched out, maybe seeing an after image. So where my hand would be moving across your screen like this, maybe seeing just a little bit of an after image. So you know how you can make your cursor on your computer sometimes you can see like an after image from where it's been. That would be more like a flashback. They're not acute. It's just not been my experience where people experience real acute flashbacks, and those tend to go away over time. Tolerance with these actually have the most rapid and pervasive tolerance, even more than opiates. So a person who ingested one hit of LSD today and they ingested the same amount tomorrow wouldn't feel it at all. Again, why would that be? Kayla, what do you think? Why would that be that people would develop a rapid tolerance to a hallucinogen that's affecting their senses?
Because your body's trying to adjust and reach homeostasis,
It is.
I guess.
Homeostasis for your senses is very important because if we are walking along a cliff, it's important for us to be able to discern where the edge of that cliff is. Most people who suffer really bad consequences from hallucinogens are due to injury because they've been that far removed from reality. Dependence, no physical dependence noted. Why? Why wouldn't there be a dependence? We're using the same neural pathways used every waking moment. They're just overstimulated. It's unlike dopamine. However, I would argue that people who take them can become psychologically dependent. Long-term use, you see a lot of really different people. People become very abstract in their thinking, very removed from reality. Others people aren't seeing what most people see. They see the world differently than others. So a lot of, if you do, they're few and far between that you'll counsel somebody that was a heavy hallucinogen user. But when you do, you'll quickly recognize this person is a very different individual. They have some very different thoughts about life and the world. And I'm not saying that they're necessarily like, antisocial, but they're more like just, they're off the beaten path. They may adopt maybe an alternative lifestyle too. Brain mechanism involved, definitely serotonin. We talked about superior colliculus and inferior colliculus. So anyway, any questions about hallucinogens here? And yeah, that was a self-testimonial. I was trying to give third person. So anyway, I thought don't need that going around. So if I'm going to post this online, but that was 25 years ago. So anyway, or 20. Any other thoughts or questions? Well, let's stop there. We'll talk about marijuana, and that'll give us a lively topic next week.